I never dreamed a simple act of kindness could change a billionaire's life forever. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. There I stood in the pouring rain, heart pounding. My hands shook as I held the dripping umbrella, desperately trying to shield myself from the elements. Fighting against the storm, I glanced around. Nobody was there. Just the sound of raindrops hitting the pavement like tiny bullets. I couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was about to happen. That's when I saw him. A figure hunched over on the street corner. His tailored suit was drenched, clinging to his skin. I blinked twice, my breath catching in my throat. Was he really a billionaire? How could someone so powerful end up here, in the rain, exposed and vulnerable? The world knows how the rich live, but no one pays attention to their pain. My heart broke for this stranger. I could have walked away, could have ignored him like countless others. But the quiet call of compassion pulled me forward. I took a shaky step and moved closer. My heart beat louder. I could almost hear the echo of his loneliness. When I reached him, I hesitated. His eyes were pools of despair, flickering in the dim light. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Those words hung in the air like a heavy fog. He looked up, startled. Those piercing blue eyes met mine. A shock rippled through me. "That I don't really know," he muttered, his voice breaking. In that instant it was as if the world fell silent. All around us faded away. I could see his trembling hands, the stress lines etched into his forehead. The other side of wealth, dark and twisted, was laid bare before me. "Let me help you," I blurted out, a surge of boldness igniting my spirit. I offered him the umbrella. "Come on, let's get out of this weather." He blinked, taken aback. And then, perhaps for the first time in days, a faint smile flickered at the corners of his mouth. It was a small spark, but it burned bright against the storm. With hesitant steps, he took the umbrella. I could feel the weight lift from his shoulders, even if just a little. But as we moved, I could see the hesitation in his eyes. What was he thinking? What demons haunted him beyond this moment? Could a single gesture like this alter the trajectory of his life? Or was it all too late for him? The thought hung heavy between us as we made our way down the street, through the darkness and rain. And just like that, everything changed. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I held my breath as we moved slowly, side by side, beneath the umbrella, the rain pouring heavily around us like a curtain shielding us from the realities of the world. The brief silence between us felt like a breach waiting to be filled, yet neither of us knew what to say. "Why were you out here?" I ventured, glancing sideways at him. There was something in the way he held himself, a weight that went beyond the rain-soaked fabric of his suit. "You shouldn't be alone in this. Every light needs someone to share the darkness with." He turned his gaze toward the pavement, his jaw tightening, clearly wrestling with inner demons. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and hesitant. "I was trying to find peace." The words hung like a heavy fog between us. "I thought the rain might wash away the pain I've been carrying." "Pain doesn't wash away easily," I said, surprising myself with my candidness. "I've learned that the hard way." For a moment, he looked at me, his eyes scanning my face as if searching for understanding. "You have no idea what pain is. It's different for someone like me." "I've lost everything," he replied, bitterness seeping into his voice. "Maybe," I whispered, "but losing everything doesn't mean you can't start over. Every storm eventually passes." I fiercely believed in that, even if I didn't have the answers myself. A silence enveloped us again, this time more comfortable, and we walked on, the clouds beginning to thin, allowing the faintest hint of twilight to break through. As we turned onto a quieter street, a small coffee shop came into view, its warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. I hesitated for a moment, then nudged him gently. "How about a warm drink? It might give us both a chance to dry off." He hesitated, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I don't think I can face people right now." I sighed, feeling the weight of his words. "Then just for a moment, let's retreat into a little warmth and shelter. No one has to know who you are." And perhaps, deep inside, a part of me craved the warmth of human connection, too. After a long pause, he relented. "Okay." Inside, the cafe buzzed softly with quiet conversations and the hiss of the espresso machine. I found a table tucked in the corner, avoiding the curious glances of the other patrons. He sat across from me, looking lost for a moment, like a lost ship trying to find its harbor again. As I grabbed my own cup of tea, I asked, "What's your name?" "Alexander." "I'm Maya." I smiled shyly, hoping to forge a connection beyond the storm. "So, Alexander, if you don't mind me asking, what happened? What brought you to that corner in the storm?" His expression darkened, and I feared that I had pushed too far, but then he took a deep breath, the steam from his cup swirling in the air like his thoughts. "My world collapsed. The business, my family, everything I built crumbled overnight." He paused, shame pouring from his voice. "People admired me for my empire, but they never cared to see the man behind it." I nodded slowly, drinking in his words. "It was heartbreaking." "That sounds unbearable. I can't imagine living in the weight of such expectations." He laughed softly, accompanied by the bitterness of past memories. "Expectation is a heavy blanket. I was supposed to be the quintessential success story." But now his voice trailed off, his gaze lost in the distance. "Now I'm just a broken man." Silence enveloped us again, but a flicker of understanding ignited between USA's shared acknowledgement of reality's unbearable cruelty. As the cafe's warmth enveloped us, I felt something stir within me, a flicker of hope nudging at the edges of the shadows lurking in his eyes. "Sometimes, broken pieces can be reassembled into something beautiful," I said, lightening my tone. "It gives us a chance to create anew." He considered my words carefully, a small spark igniting in the corner of his mouth, but the weight of his past loomed heavily still. He began to speak again, but just then, the door swung open, and a tragic figure stumbled in, soaking wet and utterly helpless, a child, clutching a battered teddy bear. Something jolted within me, the innocence and vulnerability of the child amplifying emotions I didn't know I could still feel. The noise in the cafe faded, and I could feel Alexander's eyes darting toward the child, a storm brewing once more behind his blue gaze. I met his eyes, and in that fleeting connection, I understood the gravity of what lay ahead. This moment held the potential for more than just kindness for ourselves. It could disrupt the course of both our lives once again. "Maybe we can help," I whispered, pushing my seat back and standing up. "Let's go." But just as Alexander began to rise, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I fished it out and froze, staring in disbelief. A text from an unknown number, a single line that shattered my moment of clarity. "I have something of yours. If you want it back, meet me at the old warehouse." Alone. The weight of the world crashed onto me anew, pulling me back to the darkness. I felt Alexander's gaze on me, torn between the child needing help and the urgency of my own reality, still marred by unanswered questions. What would I choose? And would I still be able to navigate the storm gathering around us both? The cafe around us dimmed into a blur as surely as my own thoughts began to spiral. My heart raced to a frantic beat, the text glowing ominously in my hand. Just as I planned to meet a moment of vulnerability and possibly help a child, something I once held dear was dangling in front of me, a ghost demanding my attention. I took a step back, the urgency of the text anchoring me in place despite the innocence of the child still hovering uncertainly by the entrance. The smile I had shared with Alexander faded as confusion settled over my features. I need to take this," I muttered, though every cell in my body yearned to go to the child, to offer whatever help I could. "Are you okay?" Alexander asked, his voice low, filled with concern that made me hesitate. I considered the gravity of my choices, both paths leading into the unknown. I faltered, glancing toward the child, whose big brown eyes were rimmed with moisture. Some instinct drove me to protect that innocence, but the weight of the text felt heavier with each passing second. "There's something I need to do, then go," he said abruptly, all softness dissipating. "If you don't, you'll never forgive yourself." There was an earnest energy in his tone that made my heart twist painfully. It was as if he could feel the threads of my dilemma unraveling but did not have the strength to reach out and stabilize them. "What about the child?" I blurted, torn between two crises. He glanced over his shoulder, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes that spoke of his own childhood before the world had demanded so much from him, before he had lost everything. "You can't save everyone, Maya. Sometimes you have to save yourself first." Before I could respond, the child took a hesitant step toward the counter, fingers clutching the teddy more tightly. It was a simple movement, yet it drummed a heartbeat into that moment. I felt like a spectator in a play where my emotions were characters on stage, wrestling for dominance. "I can help him, Alexander," I insisted, my heartstrings pulling me toward the bittersweet ache of hope. "I can't just ignore it. Not now." The soft chime of the bell above the door broke our standoff as a couple entered, their warm laughter contrasting sharply with the tension that hung in the air. I could feel time slipping through my fingers as it always seemed to do when faced with choice. "Maya," Alexander said, the cold edge of his voice trembling just a bit, "you can't let your kindness become a burden on yourself. You can't save everyone, just because you want to." His words stung, unleashing a wave of self-doubt that washed over me. What did I believe about myself? Who was I to take on the world's pain? I swallowed hard, trying to push back the swirling storm of familiar insecurity. Insecurity bred indecision. "This child, he seems lost," I said quietly, barely keeping the tremor from my voice. "I felt my resolve waning." "I get that, and I admire your heart," he replied gently, pausing to measure his words. "Trust yourself, and do what feels right in the moment. But remember, it's okay to step back sometimes. You don't have to carry everything." A war waged within me, torn between kindness and my own shadows, the memory of what had been torn away from me. Defiance surged through me. Wasn't that what I had been running from? "Okay," I breathed, still conflicted, willing to be vulnerable in front of him, hoping he might see the depth of my struggle. "But I want to do something. I can't leave the child alone. You don't understand the weight of that." Before I could hear him answer, a voice erupted from behind the counter, the barista flashing a knowing smile. "Hey there, little buddy, what's the matter?" Shock surged through me as time paused. The child met the barista's gaze, and suddenly the storm within me felt a fraction lighter. The barista bent down, cradling an offering of warmth and kindness. It was instinctive. She kneeled down, extending her hand and inviting the child closer. "We've got hot chocolate with marshmallows if you want some." It was small, insignificant to the world around us, but the child's tender smile, chased by worried brows, transformed the atmosphere. I felt a momentary spark of hope, proof that not every act of kindness needed to come from me or required grand gestures. Perhaps there were others willing to step in when least expected. Just then, Alexander's phone vibrated on the table, and he quickly glanced at it, eyes widening as his face paled. "I'm sorry," but just as quickly, he quelled his panic, and searched my gaze. "I just got a message too. I need to go to." My heart began to pound even harder. What could it mean? "Alexander, wait!" But he was already standing, pulling away from the safety of the cafe, momentarily intact, but a storm raging behind those sapphire eyes. "We'll talk later," he promised, fingers brushing against my arms as he made his way toward the door. Everything felt like it was tipping out of balance, a chaotic dance choreographed by unseen forces. I felt bound to the spot, emotions conflicting, when the unfolding tension snapped again. "Please." The child's voice rang out, trembling and laced with desperation. "I don't want to be alone." My insides twisted, a profound ache building as I watched Alexander's figure disappear into the rain. The cafe, once warm and cocooned, felt like a vast void, swirling with unresolved emotions. The innocent plea drew me back to reality, echoing in the recesses of my own fear. What do I do? I asked myself, desperation tinging the air heavy around me. Did hope lie in fleeting moments of kindness, or did the burden of choice trap me in indecisiveness? And as uncertainty wove its storm through me, I realized that answers might not come until I dared to face the meeting that awaited Meth Warehouse, and whatever darkness awaited there. The cafe was a sanctuary turned battleground, a place that had once been filled with laughter and warmth now filled with the weight of decisions and missed opportunities. The child's voice echoed in my ears, a haunting lament that tethered me to the moment like a ghost. I looked down at his trembling form, clutching the teddy bear as if it could shield him from the world's cruelty. "That I won't let you be alone," I whispered, though a flicker of doubt kindled within me. Still, remnants of hope nudged at my heart like a tender, persistent flame. The barista was still squatting nearby, smiling radiantly, as if she could sense the urgency of the child's need. "Would you like some hot chocolate, sweetheart?" she asked in a tone that felt like a security blanket against the chill of loneliness. I could see the child wrestling with his own uncertainty. Hope and fear fought for dominion over his expression. "Yes," he exclaimed, the word bursting out like a lifeline thrown into tumultuous waters. The barista gently gestured for him to follow her to the counter. My heart swelled a little, feeling the warmth of human connection start to wick away the frigid weight of anxiety that had gripped me since the moment I had received that message. As they prepared the drink, I found myself standing there, still trapped by my earlier turmoil, watching the child return to life in real time. The bubble of my indecision was starting to flutter, but it was still there, tightly wound. Each laugh from the small boy as the barista capered around the espresso machine felt like a crush of waves against the rocks of my self-doubt. In that moment, I realized the boy's distress was a mirror reflecting my own struggles. I still had my own ghosts, the remnants of a childhood void of comfort and understanding. Do I even deserve to help? I wondered silently, the question burning like a brand on my heart, but just as despair threatened to seep in again, a soft touch grazed my elbow. I turned to see an elderly woman sitting at a nearby table, her eyes kind and knowing. "Dear, it's remarkable what a little kindness can do," she said, her voice wrapping around me like a warm hug. "Sometimes, we find our strength in helping others." I absorbed her words, the hope in her gaze anchoring me. "But what if I fail?" I blurted, the moment of vulnerability spilling from my heart before I could grasp it back. She offered a gentle chuckle, waving her hand dismissively. "Failure is part of the journey. You'll never know unless you try. Every moment counts, every action matters." I nodded, feeling the words take a small root in my spirit, even as the storm continued to wage within. The barista returned, cradling a steaming cup topped with generous dollops of frothy marshmallows, offering it to the child, who was now positively glowing with excitement. I stepped closer, emboldened by the sweetness of the moment. The child's joy spilled like sunlight through the dissipating clouds of my self-doubt. "Here you go, buddy. Just for you," the barista proclaimed, her eyes shimmering with warmth that had the power to dissolve the weight of the world, if only briefly. The child's face lit up, and when he wrapped his small hands around the cup, all of us shared a moment of magic, the kind that reminded me we are all capable of lifting one another up, no matter how heavy the burdens. But the fleeting serenity shattered like glass as my phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from the reverie. It was a notification, a new message from Christopher, the name stark and unyielding against the backdrop of my muddled emotions. My heart sank, the pounding in my chest returning as dread crawled into my throat. The child took a sip, eyes wide as he savored the warmth. I couldn't help but smile at his joy, but my own turmoil returned, overpowering the sweetness of the moment. I stepped back, checking the message. "Meet me at the warehouse. You know what's at stake." Suddenly, the room spun, the joy around me fading into a cruel edge as my mind grappled with the stark reality. The warehouse? What could that possibly mean? A vein of fear tightened around me, paralyzing every thought until clarity started to emerge. A frightened whisper of understanding weaving through my bewilderment. "Are you okay?" The barista's voice cut through my haze of concern. I was startled, her kind eyes searching for signs of distress. You seem a bit lost. That I forced a smile, but it felt too brittle against the weight of truth. I think I need to go somewhere, I stammered. It's urgent. Okay, but remember, she said quietly, her hand resting on the counter as though it were a lifeline. Don't forget you're not alone. Good things can still happen. I appreciated her kindness deeply, but the weight of the impending decision loomed like an insurmountable mountain. Independent Illinois, be right back, I murmured, casting one last glance at the child, who was giggling now, a momentary balm for my panicking spirit. As I stepped towards the door, the cold air flooded in, followed by the tumultuous emotions swirling like a tempest. I couldn't shake the feeling of foreboding that clung to me, an unshakable resonance with the unknown harvest that awaited at the warehouse. A premonition gnawed at the corners of my mind. Perhaps this meeting held something more than I could anticipate, something that could change the trajectory of my life forever. When I reached the door, bracing myself for the world outside, my mind flashed back to the child's face, radiant in that fleeting moment of joy despite his struggles. Was I willing to chase a shadow at the risk of leaving behind a flicker of light? But as the door swung open, the finality of my decision loomed high, unaware of the shadows entwined beneath my choices. The weight of the uncertainty pressed harder than before, as if the fabric of my destiny twisted and shaped itself around that very moment. The air outside felt charged with the gravity of the impending confrontation, shadows dancing where light dared not tread. And yet, the door behind me sighed with the lingering warmth of kindness, whispering promises of connection that felt too fragile to hold, yet too vital to dismiss. With the rain drenching the streets, swirling as frenzied as my thoughts, I took a step forward. It was a leap into the unknown, but deep inside, I felt the very beat of hope daring me to believe. But would those noble actions be enough to shield my heart from the impending storm? The warehouse loomed ahead, sinister in its mystery, and within its walls, perhaps the changes I both dreaded and needed awaited. Would I become the very darkness I feared, or would the flicker of light sustain me through it all? I didn't know. But one thing was clear: a part of me longed for what lay ahead, even as another part quaked with the dread of possible devastation. The relentless downpour washed over the city like sorrowful tears cascading from the heavens, mirroring my tumultuous thoughts. Each step toward the warehouse felt heavier than the last, as if the very pavement were trying to pull me back, urging me to reconsider this reckless journey into the unknown. The message from Christopher loomed loud in my head, like a siren call beckoning me into the storm. But it wasn't just Christopher that I feared, it was the reality of what I was clawing my way toward. As I approached the dilapidated structure, shrouded in an almost ominous shadow, flashes of past memories spiraled in my mind like the rainwater swirling down the gutters. Memories of my family, our laughter, and the warmth that once cradled us all, except those moments when they fell away, like leaves in the autumn breeze. Every creak of the staircase trembled beneath my feet as I ascended to the second floor. The warehouse was empty except for the weight of silence that pressed in around me, a stark contrast to the chaotic world outside. I half expected to be greeted by Christopher in a storm of anger or indignation, questioning my loyalty and resolve. Instead, what greeted me was something far more unsettling. The room smelt of rust and abandonment, and my heart raced at the sight of a figure standing near the far wall, half shrouded in shadow. Someone I had not anticipated. Delilah, came Christopher's gravelly voice, filled with an emotion I couldn't quite pinpoint. Relief, perhaps. Or apprehension. I scanned the room, and the sight of him sent flutters of uncertainty through my core. You showed up. That I received your message, I replied, striving for steadiness, though my inner voice crackled with unease. What's at stake? What do you need from me? He stepped forward, revealing a face etched with lines of struggle and turmoil, the billionaire's facade peeling away to expose a raw humanity I had rarely seen. I didn't think you'd come. The vulnerability in his voice stirred an unexpected warmth within me, tentatively shrouded in a veil of compassion. As he spoke, I couldn't help but remember the ambitious man blazing with confidence, yet here he stood before me, raw and exposed, a prisoner of his own making. I'm seeking something more than just a partnership, Delilah, he continued, his voice trembling as he echoed the nuances of his own fears. I need a friend, someone who believes in the possibility of change. His confession ignited a flicker of hope in the depths of my heart, a reminder that even in life's darkest moments, there flickers a possibility for redemption and growth. What brought you to this conclusion? I queried delicately, a sliver of pity weaving its way into my voice. His laugh held a rough edge, reminiscent of shattered glass. Accidents of fate. The burdens of profit. I've done things I'm not proud of, and they haunt me. He hesitated, his brow furrowing. I can't keep pretending it's all fine. I thought wealth would buy me the happiness I lost, but instead, it only distanced me from who I wanted to be. Hearing this, my heart responded with a knowing ache. We all have shadows lurking beneath our surfaces, but the dissonance between his wealth and desperation was striking. Faced with his scars, I couldn't help but reach out, bridging the chasm between us. You're not alone in feeling lost to your circumstances. I understand more than you realize. Somewhere in the chaos of my emotions, I felt a shared understanding, blossom, a fragile thread of hope binding our stories together. Against the odds, just as I began to grasp the potential for connection, a sudden crash echoed through the warehouse, shaking me from the moment. The door splintered open, and two figures stumbled in, faces lit by the pulse of streetlights breaking through the rain. My pulse quickened, instinctively stepping in front of Christopher as recognition washed over me like cold water. It was the boy, the child from the cave, now soaked to the bone and trembling beside a man whose shadow loomed dark and menacing. Please. I just wanted to help. The boy cried out, clutching the remnants of the hot chocolate cup, now splattered with muddy rain. What are you doing here? The man growled, a sinister grin creeping across his face. It was a face I had seen before, but the depth of anger and resentment twisted it into something unrecognizable. Kids shouldn't be meddling in adult affairs, stay back. I shouted, instinctively pushing Christopher behind me, my heart pounding as adrenaline surged through my veins. The man's hand tightened to fist. This is none of your business, or his. At that pivotal moment, everything inside me ignited. I felt the burning strength of anger rising with each beat of my heart, a flame sparked to life amidst fear. He's just a child. An innocent soul caught in the tides of your chaos. You won't hurt him. The man hesitated, a ripple of uncertainty flickering across his features, but the wild glint in his eyes spoke of chaos and desperation. The air crackled with tension, and I felt the weight of both their futures bearing down upon me. Get out of here, kid. Christopher yelled, his hand already reaching for the phone in his pocket. You don't belong in this fight. No. The boy shouted, voice rising defiantly, a tiny figure against the storm raging between us. I won't abandon you. With that, the knot of connection between us tightened. In that moment, I realized the child held a strength that could rival any adult's fury. Innocence turned fury, ignited in the face of darkness. I grasped the gravity of this situation as shadows loomed, igniting a new fear within me. Would we all become victims of this storm together? Every heartbeat echoed a question: could we turn this confrontation into a moment of redemption, or would we be swallowed whole by the very shadows we battled? The rain hammered against the warehouse, a deafening backdrop to the chaotic scene unfolding. I clutched my fists, feeling the heat of determination seep into my skin as the man's figure advanced, ready to seize control. Just beyond him, the boy's wide eyes glimmered with unyielding resolve, a flicker of light in the encompassing darkness. His bravery stirred something deep within me, like a long-dormant ember warming to life. Stop. I called out again, my voice raw and fervent. This isn't how it has to be. We can help each other. For a fleeting moment, the man faltered, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. But the storm of rage brewing within him was not so easily calmed. Help. He spat, as if the word tasted bitter on his tongue. You think I need help from a child and a lost girl? His sneer cut deep, revealing the truth that lived behind his hardened exterior, a truth I recognized all too well. Each of us had become prisoners of our own choices, shackled by the decisions we made. As his hostility radiated, I felt an urgency to reach past the anger, to the sadness hidden beneath. Look at him. I implored, gesturing toward the boy, who stood defiantly despite his trembling frame. He's the embodiment of hope. You used to be like that too, didn't you? He scoffed but didn't move, his confusion battling with the demon's head carried for far too long. I could see it within him, a flicker of repressed memories where joy once reigned. You don't know anything, he snapped, but his voice wavered, revealing cracks in his armor that I took a tentative step forward, fueled by the urgency of the moment. I know what it's like to feel lost. I know what it means to be weighed down by decisions and guilt. We all crave understanding. You don't have to be alone in this. Christopher's gaze burned into my back, his presence a steady reminder of the collective struggle. We're fighting for something better, he intervened, now standing alongside me with an allyship that felt wholly unexpected. What you're doing isn't the answer. You have a choice. Responding to Christopher's words, the man's facade began to crack. Desperation fought with the weighing sorrow in his chest. What do you want from me? He asked, his voice a whisper lost amidst the rain. The boy, emboldened by our courage, stepped slightly closer to the man, holding out the tattered hot chocolate cup with hopeful reverence. I just wanted to help. I thought you were sad, he whispered, his voice barely carrying above the downpour, yet filled with a sincerity that rang true. That I in his small gesture lay the essence of humanity, the breath of compassion, the fight for understanding. We all possess the capacity for kindness, but so often it's masked by the weight of our struggles, lost in the crossfire between despair and our longing for redemption. The man's stance shifted as he processed the boy's offering, a glimmer of vulnerability breaking through the walls he had built. I don't need pity, he growled, yet even he knew his words were saturated with emptiness. Then let us help you, I urged, my own heart pounding with a compassion that felt almost reckless. You don't have to hide behind anger. Life can be more than just surviving. The storm outside continued unhindered, but in that moment, a fragile truce settled between us, binding our shared pain in the murky depths of the warehouse. For all the moments that had brought us here, each heartbreak, each regret, something within started to shift. The possibilities hung heavy in the air, waiting to be embraced, but then, without warning, the sound of shuffling feet echoed from below, and the door smashed open a second time. A gang of figures flooded inside, their shadows steeped in malice, eyes glinting with a dangerous hunger. We knew you would show up here, one of them sneered, blocking the only exit. Panic rippled through the room, and all progress made was suffocated by the sudden onslaught of fresh fear. They had come, seemingly out of nowhere, to add to our chaos, their intentions veiled behind grins oozing with menace. Looks like we're in the wrong place at the wrong time, Christopher murmured, a newfound urgency flaring in his voice as he scanned the room for an escape that was rapidly vanishing. Stay close, I whispered to the boy as instincts surged in both of us. Together we had to find a way out of this storm, both literally and metaphorically. The hope that had begun to flicker in the dark faced its greatest challenge. Yet would we be consumed by the shadows, or could we still forge a path toward light amid the chaos? As the confrontation intensified, everything spiraled into a cacophony of shouts and chaos, the line between friend and foe blurring with each heartbeat. The weight of the world fell onto our shoulders, heavy with the anticipation of loss and the chance of hope, all intertwined in an endless embrace of uncertainty. Would it take a singular moment of courage to change everything, or were we merely delaying the inevitable crash of despair? I tightened my grip on the boy's hand, unwilling to let go, as I faced those outside the sanctuary of our fragile alliance. Whatever the outcome, I knew we were no longer alone in this fight. But would we find the strength to prevail, or would we be forever lost in the tempest? The air in the warehouse thickened with tension, each breath a reminder of the precarious situation we found ourselves in. The gang members advanced like wolves closing in on their prey, vicious laughter echoing off the damp walls. My heart raced, an unsteady drumbeat drowning out the cacophony of harsh words exchanged among them. Let me handle this, the man who had once been our adversary said, voice low as he moved away from us, his back straightening with a mix of vulnerability and defiance. For a second, clarity washed over his features. Was he stepping up to protect us, or was this merely another mask he wore? Wait. I reached out instinctively, wanting to pull him back, but he was already striding forward, a storm brewing behind his eyes. You don't have to do this alone. That he shot me a glance, a flash of emotion too fleeting to read before he turned back, confronting the newcomers. I'm not your punching bag, he spat, bravado salvaging some shred of dignity that seemed to transform the frightened man I'd tried to save. Is that so? The leader of the gang mocked, stepping closer, his hands gliding casually over the weapons strapped to his body. You think you can stand up to us? The room shuddered with anticipation as that simple act of standing tall ignited something within me, a shared rebellion among those willing to stand against the tide of despair. It filled me with the kind of courage I hadn't known existed. Together, I whispered to Christopher and the boy, who nodded silently, determination clear in their eyes. In that instant, we formed an unbreakable bond, forged by our will to fight for something greater than ourselves. Stay back! I shouted, surprising even myself, as the bravado surged through my veins. You want to fight? You'll get one. The gang members paused, the unexpected defiance momentarily disarming them. Yet, I knew fear lurked just beneath the surface of my resolve. A shrouded question lingered: could we really win this fight, or had we merely ignited a spark in a suffocating darkness that would consume us in turn? As if sensing our collective challenge, the gang responded with charged aggression. You think you can take us on? Snarled the leader, eyes narrowing as he brandished a knife, the silver blade gleaming ominously in the half-light. You're in over your heads. Just then, chaos erupted. Raindrops pounded harder against the roof, a wild symphony of nature mirroring our internal uproar. The storm outside had monsoon-like fervor, and it was almost as if the universe had tilted in support of our impending battle, a cosmic witness to our stand. But in the chaos, a flicker caught my eye. A shadowy figure appeared by the doorway, an uninvited presence shrouded in mystery. For a fleeting moment, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me as I squinted, trying to lock onto any recognizable features. But the figure was cloaked, obscured and swathed in shadows, emanating an aura of mystique. Who are you? The gang leader's threat halted momentarily, attention diverted, confusion washing over the tension-laden atmosphere. The figure remained silent, an oversized hood drowning the face, but as they stepped forward, the light caught a glimmer of something familiar, a hint of gold that spoke of power and authority, and then, recognition washed over me like cold water, chill running down my spine. You, I murmured, uncertainty veiling my voice. It can't be. The hood lowered slightly, revealing a face I'd thought lost to memory, an unexpected bond born from circumstances we had yet to fully understand. You're back, I breathed, the weight of their presence stirring old memories, once cherished but now imbued with an uncomfortable sense of conflict. The gang members exchanged glances, reluctant acceptance of this new player in the storm of confrontation brewing. Seems like we have unexpected guests, one of them commented, a mix of fear and curiosity passing through their ranks. At the moment, I felt torn between the burgeoning hope felt in my heart and the fear clawing at the back of my mind. Was this figure a long-awaited ally, or would they plunge us all deeper into darkness, igniting rivalries better left extinguished? The rain pounded harder, breathing new life into a menacing dance of possibility. No longer was this simply about me, the boy, or even the man who had so fiercely confronted his past. This was layered in complexity, a tempest of broken lives coming together. And as the new figure stepped further into view, I realized that every breath and every heartbeat drew us closer to a revelation that might shatter everything we thought we understood about our enemy, about each other, and even about ourselves. Would we emerge victorious, or had we unwittingly invited greater chaos within this storm? The warehouse grew quiet, charged with a tension that felt palpable against our skin. I stared at the figure that had stepped into the fray, a ghost from the past cloaked in shadows. The brief flicker of hope I felt suddenly flickered like a dying candle, threatened by the winds of uncertainty. Do you know this person? Christopher whispered, breaking the silence with urgency. I could sense the skepticism in his voice, a reflection of my own confusion, yet deep down, a part of me yearned for the comfort of familiarity. Yes, I managed to say, but the word felt like it was stealing breath from my lungs. But things have changed. The figure moved closer, and the wary gang members shifted uncomfortably, caught between the unknown and their bravado. As the indistinct face revealed more features, I was struck by the wide-set eyes that had always held an undercurrent of mischief, now tempered by something deeper, perhaps remorse or recognition of lost time. Luna, they murmured, breathing my name like a prayer woven with stories only we could read. It's been a long time. I could see both walls and bridges shattering and forming around that single acknowledgement. "What are you doing here?" "This isn't your fight," I said, fighting the wave of nostalgia washing over me like a tide ready to claim the shore. "I know," they replied softly, lifting the hood completely to reveal tangled locks of hair that shone in the muted light. "But sometimes you have to step back into the fire to save what you love, don't you think?" The gang leader smirked, barely masking his irritation at the interruption. "This isn't a game, sweetheart," he drawled, pointing his knife in our direction. "You think inspiration will save you when there are blades drawn," but my heart was racing not from fear, but from the memory of the person who had once shared laughter with me in quieter days, a person who had walked a parallel line of ambition, but whose worth had been measured by gold. My thoughts rushed to the disparity of wealth and the choices that had once separated us, yet here we were, back to back against a wall of darkness, breathing the same air, desperate to survive. "The past has a way of haunting us," Christopher murmured, stepping beside me, resolute. "But we can change narratives, we can rewrite this." Together that I couldn't tell if the comment was aimed at me or Luna, perhaps it was merely an echo of his own hope. But there was power in what he said, and in that instant, I realized we did share a common thread of fight for redemption against forces that sought to tear us apart. "Luna, what do you want?" The question surprised me, but I couldn't keep it in any longer. The shadows loomed larger, looming like the stakes we were suddenly part of. "I want to make things right," they said, addressing both me and the gang members. The sincerity in their voice beckoned my thoughts away from distrust. "This isn't," but the gang didn't wait for more exposition. "Shut up!" one of them snarled, advancing with warning. The fear they should have felt was masked under arrogance, but I could see through the bravado. They were shaken, the tide was turning. In that moment, Luna lunged forth, breaking through the encroaching threat. "Wait! I have something to offer," they declared, their gaze piercing through the adrenaline-driven chaos. "Let's talk, not fight. There's no need for bloodshed." It was a gamble, I could see it etched across their face as the words hung in the air like an uninvited storm. The gang leader hesitated, sizing up the boldness of a solution buried beneath layers of desperation and fanaticism. The others exchanged uneasy glances, weighing the risk against their thirst for intimidation. Rivulets of rain still pounded relentlessly on the roof, deafening, each drop a countdown to a decision that could determine our fate. The air around us thickened further, crackling with potential violence and the remnants of a shared past. Moments turned into eternities, and a pulse of collective suspense gripped our hearts like a vice. It was an invitation to either redemption or despair, and I could sense each heartbeat reverberating through the steel walls surrounding us. And when the gang leader finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous, instead of a backlash, he beckoned a new uncertainty. "All right. Talk. But make it quick. We're losing our patience, and it doesn't take much to turn your little gathering into a massacre." Luna's expression flashed with resolve, but there was still that flicker of fear in their eyes as they opened their mouth to speak. Suddenly, the faint sound of sirens wailed in the distance, slicing through the tension. A revelation struck me like lightning, a realization that spread panic through the gang and electrified the rest of us. "What if they're coming for you?" I whispered, eyes wide with realization. And suddenly, a small moment of kindness, a gesture made years ago, shifted unceremoniously into a tumultuous whirlwind. In the shadow of old relationships, the air grew heavy with the promise of hope and the lurking specter of calamity. Just as Luna opened their mouth to answer, a figure appeared outside, silhouetted against the storm. My anxiety coiled tighter around me, a thought racing through my mind: would our past resurface to haunt us, or were we simply drawing deeper lines in an already chaotic future? The warehouse pulsed with energy, a suffocating cocoon built from fear and uncertainty. The sirens blared in the distance like the warning of a coming storm, shrouding us in anxiety and the gnawing knowledge that time was running out. I watched Luna, their expression caught between the desperation of their plea and the reality of the gang around us, whose patience was waning. "Listen!" Luna shouted, their voice carrying a blend of authority and vulnerability that demanded attention. "I know what I'm asking is insane, but it doesn't have to end with bloodshed. We can help each other." The gang leader's sneer deepened, eyes flickering to the shadows outside. You think you can barter your way out of this? What's your offer? Your precious memories. More than that, Luna replied, steadying themselves under the weight of scorn. I have inside knowledge about the deals you've been making. The authorities are onto you. But I can help you. If we work together. A sharp laugh echoed through the room, cutting through Luna's determined words like a knife. What do you mean work together? We don't need you. Besides, we're more than capable of handling whatever the cops throw at us. They shifted, their confidence frail, but the gang was unsettled by the sirens' growing crescendo. Christopher stepped forward, grounding the chaos. You don't want this fight. No one will win here. But if we choose collaboration over conflict, maybe there's a way out for all of us. His words hung in the air, a fragile lifeline amidst the storm. The gang members reluctantly shifted, uncertainty roiling in their eyes, but the leader still seemed anchored in his arrogance. What do you know, boy? He spat, and for a brief moment, I feared the volatility of this encounter would turn, but another voice interjected, clearer than the rest, drawing attention like a beam in a thick fog. You're all trapped here, caught in an endless cycle of vengeance and regret. Don't you see that? It was a young member of the gang, his expression twisting in conflict, the weight of hesitation visible on his face. We don't have to keep following this path. The words, a blend of sentiment and rebellion, sparked a glimmer of something new, a potential shift within the gang dynamic. They exchanged glances, uncertainty sharpening their gaze but veiling their hardened hearts. And as I stood still, taking in their quiet turmoil, I felt the weight of my own past press on me with renewed ferocity. Why did you come back, Luna? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, even as they stood at the center of our imminent danger. The question hung heavy between us, tempered with the need for clarity that felt elusive. To find you, Luna said, vulnerability gleaming in their gaze. When everything spiraled out of control, I realized how lost I really was. I never stopped caring, and I thought if I could just fix one thing, it would lead to the next. Before Luna could finish, the clamor of the sirens began to swell, loud and overwhelming. The gang leader's confidence faltered, and it was almost palpable. They shifted in place, grappling with a reality that was beginning to unravel. We can use the distractions. If we can get the cops to focus on a different scene, one of the gang members began, and the hesitant spark of rebellion began to bloom into something tangible. Hope intertwined with trepidation, and I could sense that fragile threads of loyalty and fear were fraying at the edges. You would risk it all? Luna asked softly, hope igniting in their eyes. We don't have to stay here to face this. We can find a way out together. The gang leader's expression hardened again, but beneath the surface, I could tell his resolve was beginning to chip away. The young member's intonation echoed in that moment, their whispered grievances against the life they had been thrust into surprisingly powerful. Maybe there's a way to escape the fire, I said, my pulse steadying as the realization cut through my haze of fear. But we have to do it together, we have to trust each other. The sound of the sirens drew closer, and with it, the weight of our truth settled upon us. This was no longer merely a fight for survival, it was a potential alliance forged from the ashes of our pasts, one that could rewrite the trajectories of our lives, forever altering our fates. The gang leader took a step back, brow furrowing, as the tides continued to turn. We don't have much time, he conceded, voice gritty but uncertain. But if we're ready to take this gamble. The words hung unsteadily, trembling with the weight of impending choices. Luna turned to me, eyes shimmering with a mixture of fear and the possibility of reconciliation. I felt my heart race anew. What if we succeeded? What if this was the pivotal change we desperately needed? But then the unexpected happened. A loud crash echoed from across the warehouse. A figure stumbled in, drenched and dazed, their face contorted in alarm. My breath caught in my throat as recognition hit me like a tidal wave. It was Alex, my brother, the one who had left years ago without a word. And as disbelief tangled with dread in the pit of my stomach, I could only grip onto the fragile sense of hope, teetering on the brink of calamity. Luna. There's he gasped, the words dying in his throat as the gravity of our situation crashed down around us. Everything was on the edge, a single revelation away from spiraling beyond control. Would our past chase us into this chaotic future? Would we emerge transformed, or would we all fall together, ensnared by the ghosts of our choices? I couldn't breathe as I stared at Alex, his familiar features twisted by fear and the rain that clung to him like a second skin. All the years of silence collapsed into one moment, a culmination of hurt and unresolved tension swirling like the storm outside, mingled with the chaos brewing inside the warehouse. "What are you doing here?" I breathed, my heart pounding loudly in my ears as confusion tightened around me. "Why now?" "I didn't know where else to go," he gasped, voice raw and ragged, eyes darting nervously between the figures scattered around the room. He was on the brink of crumbling, and suddenly my own desperation faded into the background. The past that had haunted us now loomed before us, demanding acknowledgement and perhaps, forgiveness. "They're coming for you, Luna. We have to go." I felt the weight of his warning prick at the edges of my consciousness. But alongside his frantic plea was a backdrop of shared pain, a lifetime of memories interwoven with laughter and anguish, all tied to the choices we had made. "If you're here, they're already on to us." The gang shifted, uncertainty etched on their faces as they began to realize the reality of our situation. The sirens drew closer, an inexorable reminder that time was of the essence. In that moment of heightened tension, a thought flickered to lift a moment that would test our resilience and redefine the very notion of family. "We can't go back to how things were," I proclaimed, feeling the spark of courage ignite within me. "Not anymore. Alex, you can't keep running. We have to face this together." His shoulders slumped slightly, the weight of 1,000 unspoken apologies clinging to the air between us. "I made a mistake," he whispered, and for the first time, I saw palpable regret glaze over his eyes. "I wish I could take it all back." Time seemed to pause. Watching my brother bear his vulnerability, grasping at old wounds, I realized he was as lost as the rest of us, trapped in the echoes of choices that had pulled us down divergent paths. "What if this is our chance?" I pushed, a desperate motion to draw him back into the fold of family. "What if we can obliterate the darkness by confronting it head-on? We're stronger together." The words hovered in the air, thick with anticipation, and then I saw a flicker of hope igniting in Alex's eyes. "I'm tired of running," he said, voice trembling yet steady. It wasn't just a declaration, it was a vow, a promise of solidarity amid the uncertainty that enveloped us. At that moment, a spherical bond formed between us, held together by the whispers of shared trauma and the commitment to transcending the shadows of our past. My gaze shifted, taking in the tension bristling among the gang members, the uncertainty mirrored in their eyes. This was an opportunity. Here, in the ruins of our stories, shards of redemption glimmered faintly. "If we can all be honest about what we've lost," I urged, my heart thundering, "maybe we can actually change the narrative. Together, as one, we could endeavor to pull ourselves from the abyss." The gang leader hesitated, old arrogance flickering like a candle caught in a draft. "This isn't just one person's journey. We all feel the weight of our mistakes. Isn't there a way for us to break free of this cycle?" A ripple of acknowledgement flowed through the group, an unspoken recognition that festered beneath the weight of bravado. "Not everyone has to lose," I added, my voice buoyed by newfound conviction. "We don't have to be alone." What followed was a moment of stillness, a fleeting pause where all of our fates hung delicately in balance. The rain drummed a relentless symphony outside, through the slats of the old warehouse, but inside, we were bound by the potential of change. "You really think that can work?" Luna asked, threading their fingers anxiously, reflection etched across their face. "We have nothing but despair behind us." "Then let's build something new," I insisted, the words flowing forth like water from a broken dam. "Each of us has the power to rewrite our stories. We can forgive the past if we're willing to step into the light, together." The gang shifted, whispered conversations sprouting as members exchanged glances, weighing the reality of our proposition. But it wasn't just the weight of their decisions hanging in the air, it was the flicker of hope woven with an echo of hesitation, and that current of recognition bore down on all of us, uniting our fears for survival, for redemption. Maybe it starts with a promise, Alex suggested, a newfound light igniting in his gaze. We can promise each other that we'll stand together against whatever storms await, he continued, voice steady and resolute. At least we won't face it alone. His words resonated with a current of kindred spirit among us, and slowly, we nodded as if embracing a truth that had long evaded us. As uncertainty ebbed away, I felt a sense of clarity bloom amidst the chaos, the realization that even in the face of the shadows of our past, collaboration and solidarity could shatter those very chains that held us captive. Okay, the gang leader finally said, his voice no longer laced with menace but resonating with fragile hope. Let's see if we can agree on something that brings us out of these dark waters together. The sirens continued to wail, growing louder, but beneath their encroaching tension lay the spark of renewed possibility. We stood together, lives intertwined by the choices we made in desperation, transformed from adversaries into allies. The storm outside raged on, but in its midst, we found a flicker of unity, bond forged in the fires of acceptance and understanding, hope daring to rise from the ashes of despair. Might we be able to rewrite our fates? This isn't the end, I whispered softly, drawing strength from the others surrounding me. The moments that would unfold may still linger in uncertainty, but even those shadows could not eclipse the light that ignited within us in that warehouse. As the sounds of chaos enveloped us, a new promise hung in the air, a promise of connection, of shared journeys. We were choosing to embrace the power of change, bound together by resilience. We can face the storm, I said, gently squeezing Alex's hand, before turning to Luna and Christopher. Together. There, in that fractured space faded by the weight of our pasts, a new dawn broke for the shimmering thread of hope interwoven through our hearts. And while darkness would always linger at the edges, we found ourselves beginning to forge a path toward light, stepping forward not as individuals, but as a collective of souls reborn into something greater. Let's go, I said, and with a renewed determination, we moved as one ready to face the storm together, hand in hand, our past still echoing behind us, but now filled with the potential for a radiant future ahead. I looked at Alex, my brother, and saw not just the boy I once knew but a soul eager to rise from the ashes, knowing that perhaps this time, we would emerge on the other side, transformed not just by our struggles, but illuminated by love. The rain, relentless and fierce, couldn't wash that away. As we stepped into the storm, ready to face the world anew, I felt the solidity of our bond fortifying our resolve together, we would break free. And in that moment, as the first droplets began to fall, I knew this was only the beginning, a reminder that we all hold the power to navigate through even the fiercest storms in life's unpredictable journey. With a shared heartbeat, we ventured into the tempest, ready to embrace whatever awaited us on the horizon, knowing that sometimes, vulnerability and connection forge a strength relentless enough to change the course of our lives forever. We're finally home, I whispered, a vow to the heart that had carried us through. And as we stepped forward, I felt hope coursing through my veins, knowing we were ready to rewrite our destinies. The world would see us now.